In the shadowy corners of history, there lurk tales that chill the blood and stir the soul. Tales that are not merely relics of a bygone era, but echoes of a dark truth that still resonates today. Witch hunts, a term that conjures images of fear, persecution, and injustice. But what if we told you these aren't just forgotten horrors of the past? Welcome to our deep dive into the dark truth. Today, we're peeling back the layers of time to reveal that witch hunts are far from over. From the christening of a sleeping beauty, to bestowing a not-so-innocent apple, to the fairest of them all, witches have been a childhood nightmare to some of us while growing. They can be frightful and horrifying, or sassy, seductive, and sometimes even alluring. They engage in aerial travel on broomsticks and invoke magic through spells, conjuring both beneficial and malevolent forces. Witches have become a familiar presence in Western popular culture. Yet humor and entertainment aside, being branded a witch can still lead to your demise. Let's take a look into DW's Karen Helmstadt's tragic story of her ancestor, where she uncovered the story of her forebear, Margaretta Crober. In the year 1642, over 3 centuries ago, she found herself accused, subjected to a trial, tortured, and ultimately burned at the stake as a witch. For years, she was haunted by Margarette's narrative, an impulse pushing her to seek out the truth of what transpired. Her journey led her to Winningen, a modest town situated in southwestern Germany. This picturesque place, known for its winemaking, is encircled by an idyllic landscape of undulating hills and vineyards. Yet amidst this beauty lies a mass grave on one of the hills. The Winningen Witch Trials of the 17th century led to the deaths of over 20 individuals in this very locale. The names of these victims are engraved on Germany's earliest monument dedicated to those persecuted for witchcraft. Karen Helmstadt, a cultural reporter at DW, said, "This spot is, in fact, where the witches were executed, the site of their punishment. If you come this way, I've ventured up here numerous times with my family, and each time we came to pay our respects to our ancestor, Margaretta Crober." So, who was Margaretta Crober? Why was she accused of practicing witchcraft? To uncover the truth, she sought the assistance of local historian Walter Rummel. He possesses a comprehensive understanding of every witch trial within this region, including that of her own ancestor. Walter Rummel, historian. Margaretta was a fascinating individual, as various clues suggest that she possessed great intelligence, a profound sense of responsibility, and a level of self-assuredness that potentially led her to challenge societal norms and cross boundaries with other members of the community. It appears she may have been a bit of a rebel, someone unafraid to deviate from established social norms, and potentially ahead of her time. Margaret hailed from a prosperous family and married a judge, positioning her within the town's upper echelons. When accusations of witchcraft arose, she was the mother of 2 young boys. One notable incident occurred within a church, where she experienced a mortifying bout of dysentery in front of the congregation. Subsequently, her accusers claimed that Satan had followed her into this sacred space. This incident was just one of many accusations, including the alleged act of causing grave illness in others through food or drink. The state archives in nearby Koblenz house, the original records of the Winningen Witch Trials, meticulously preserved. With Walter's guidance, I made a shocking discovery. It turns out that Margaretta's own mother had suffered the same fate as a witch, being burned at the stake before her. Maria Knebel was, in fact, the first person executed for witchcraft in Winningen as far back as 1631. Consequently, Margaretta faced an uphill battle from the very start. However, the question remains, when did this fervor for witch hunts originate, and why? Rita Voltmer, who is a historian and expert in European witch hunts. The study of demonology has existed since the inception of theological thought. Theological and Christian teachings have been grappling with these questions from the very beginning. The Old Testament already held a dim view of witches, as evidenced in the book of Exodus, which states, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." However, it was the 13th century Dominican friar and theologian Thomas Aquinas who significantly influenced the Church's stance on witchcraft. Aquinas posited that the world was teeming with malevolent demons, and that witches engaged in maleficent sorcery. He went so far as to assert that women were particularly susceptible to demonic possession and often willingly made pacts with the devil, even engaging in sexual liaisons with him. This ideology gained further traction in 1326, when Pope John XXIII declared the practice of magic as heretical. With this endorsement, the Church intensified its efforts to warn people of this new menace. This mindset led to the formal categorization of witchcraft as a criminal offense, effectively paving the way for the infamous European witch hunts. By the 15th century, this misleading narrative had spread like wildfire, embodied in a book titled Malleus Maleficarum, or The Hammer of Witches, authored by Dominican Inquisitor Heinrich Kramer, and initially published in 1486. This time served as a manual for identifying, trying, torturing, and executing witches. Kramer provided meticulous instructions on how witches forged pacts with the devil, renounced their Christian faith, engaged in acts like cannibalizing children, and generally wreaked havoc in their surroundings. This toxic doctrine coincided with the rise of the printing press, facilitating the swift dissemination of its message. Over the ensuing 2 centuries, the Malleus's gained immense popularity, rivaling only the Bible in terms of sales. These ideas found visual representation in iconic works, such as 15th century woodcuts that inspired artists like Albrecht Dürer and Hans Baldung Green. Their renditions of deviant, diabolical women perpetuated through time, with a notable example being the 1922 cult horror film Hexen. These concepts struck a chord, as the early modern era in Europe was marked by numerous challenges, including invasions, religious conflicts, new diseases like syphilis, and even climatic turmoil due to the Little Ice Age. From the early 14th to the mid-19th century, a period known as the Little Ice Age, 1306-1860, much of northern Europe was gripped by plummeting temperatures, resulting in crop failure, extreme weather, and economic distress. Rita Voltmer said, "People began attributing various woes, such as famine, disease, and other hardships, to witches. Driven by greed, envy, and resentment, they believed that these witches were in league with the devil, employing malicious magic to cause the tumultuous weather conditions. In a sense, it was a perfect storm. Witches offered a simple explanation to Europe's beleaguered population for the widespread suffering, and this provided the impetus for the surge in witch hunts." Contemporary historians estimate that approximately 50,000 to 60,000 people fell victim to the European witch trials, with about 80% of the victims being women. Roughly half of these victims, numbering around 25,000 individuals, were executed within the present-day boundaries of Germany. Let's return to Margarette's story. Her experience was emblematic of her time. She faced accusations, arrest, and a humiliating search for a supposed devil's mark on her body. Her hair was forcibly shaved, yet she remained steadfast in her denial. This led the Witch Commission to resort to torture, a legally accepted method at the time. Rita Voltmer said, "The presumption was that anyone accused was already deemed guilty. The individual had to prove their innocence. The belief was that the confession already existed beneath the surface and needed to be extracted. Torture was viewed as a means to liberate the soul by annihilating the body, facilitating remorse and confession." Margarette underwent the iron boot, an instrument designed to slowly crush her lower leg. When her innocence persisted, she was suspended by her hands with a rope, causing excruciating agony. Driven to the brink of insanity by the torment, she ultimately implicated another woman, a tactic frequently employed to spark additional witch trials and perpetuate this vicious cycle. After 2 days of unbearable anguish, Margaret succumbed, confessing to being a witch and sealing her own fate. The records from the trials unveiled more about my family's history. Numerous relatives fell victim to the witch hunts, including one imprisoned for weeks in a freezing dungeon in the neighboring town of Castellane. Intriguingly, this victim was a man, a fact often overlooked. In fact, close to a quarter of all European witch hunt victims were male, a reality often neglected. The traditional narrative has frequently implicated cunning women midwives and healers as the primary targets of witch accusations. Yet Rita Voltmere dispels this notion. Rita Voltmere said, "The persistent myth surrounding midwives has endured over time, suggesting that the church and state colluded to persecute cunning women, healers, and midwives in an effort to suppress their knowledge of birth control and abortion. However, this premise is fundamentally flawed." Rita, along with her peers, asserts that many common witch hunt myths have been perpetuated by feminist interpretations, fitting neatly into political agendas. These interpretations have often been embraced by women's movements as they seek to challenge patriarchal structures. For decades, the witch has been embraced as a symbol of power, representing women's liberation and their quest for justice and autonomy. Pam Grossman, a modern witch, author and host of the Witch Wave podcast, articulates this sentiment. She said, "She embodies power, serving as a subversive symbol. She signifies women's freedom, independence, the pursuit of justice, and the quest for inner peace. Ultimately, she is a deeply inspiring figure, unyielding and uncontainable." Returning to 1642, Margaretta embodied a provocative figure, stirring unrest in a society where women's roles were heavily constrained. Yet her gender did not necessarily predispose her to the accusation, as witchcraft allegations could befall anyone. As for the accusations against Winningen, what prompted the execution of 20 witches in this seemingly tranquil town? One theory suggests that the city, being a wine-producing region, suffered considerably during the Little Ice Age. Could it be that, desperate for a scapegoat, the townspeople sought someone to blame for the hailstorms that ravaged their crops? Alternatively, religious fervor and radicalism might have played a role. Who were the individuals behind the Witch Commission, responsible for overseeing these trials? Walter Rummel, a historian, said, "The Witch Commission consisted of local citizens seeking to improve their social status. This secular tribunal seized the opportunity to disrupt existing power dynamics, boosting its own position at the cost of the victims. It was a story of power, envy, resentment, and financial gain." Given Margaret's privileged background within the social hierarchy, it's unsurprising she became a target. This debunking extends to the widespread notion that Catholicism fueled the European witch hunts. Contrary to this belief, it was often Protestant communities that exhibited more zealous fervor in their persecution of witches than their Catholic counterparts. After the Reformation, numerous Protestant communities aimed to assert their religious superiority, attempting to distinguish their faith as the correct one. This fervor influenced the frequency of accusations. Rita Voltmere, historian. The narrative suggesting that Catholics persecuted witches and Protestants acted with restraint lacks substantiation. In regions that converted to Protestantism, surrounded by dominant Catholic communities, the pressure to prove the merits of Protestantism was immense. This pressure undoubtedly affected the frequency of witch accusations. In fact, some predominantly Catholic regions, such as Italy and Spain, were relatively safe havens for individuals associated with witchcraft. The Roman Inquisition persecuted those accused of sorcery, magic, and superstition, but rarely enacted the death penalty, Similarly, the Spanish Inquisition never executed witches, as they concluded early on that witchcraft itself was non-existent. The witch hunts in Norway, a predominantly Protestant country, further reinforced the notion that witch trials were not exclusive to Catholic territories. Vardø, a small Norwegian town, bore witness to one of Scandinavia's most significant witch trials, resulting in the execution of 91 individuals for witchcraft in 1621, nearly one-third of the town's population at the time. Margaretta Crober's tragic story reached its heart-rending conclusion in November 1642. Forced to address a gathering of townspeople, Margaretta's final words were a plea for forgiveness and a reminder to keep God in their hearts. Margaretta Crober said, "As God is my witness, I beg anyone whom I may have wronged in my life for forgiveness. May I be an example to all, and I entreat all of you, to keep God before thine eyes and shield yourselves from the evil enemy." Margaretta met her end in a merciful manner. She was beheaded before her body was burned. Disturbingly, her execution was accompanied by an extravagant display of revelry. Records indicate that 250 liters of wine were brought to the execution site, a calculated attempt to implicate the entire town in her fate. The bill for the wine was handed to Margaretta's husband, epitomizing the profitable nature of witch trials. The system, comprising commissioners, scribes, vintners, and executioners, thrived on perpetuating the cycle of witch hunts, enriching these participants. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the belief in witchcraft continues to persist globally, with dire consequences. Expert Wolfgang Behringer reveals a chilling reality. More individuals were killed for alleged witchcraft in the 20th century than during the entirety of the European witch hunts. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's journey into the past, we've got another thrilling adventure waiting for you. Have you ever wondered about the existence of ancient giants? We have a video that dives deep into this fascinating topic. You'll be amazed by what we've uncovered. Click right here on the screen or find the link in the description below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Weird Times for more exciting historical mysteries. Until next time, keep exploring.